So our next set of speakers come from the Northeast Seed Network, which is a new seed partnership that was launched at the National Native Seed Conference last year at Washington, D.C. And we have with us today talking about small-scale native seed production in the Northeast. We have Lindsay Feinberg from the Hilltop Hanover Farm, Emily Baisden and Andrea Berry from Wild Seed Project, and Uli Lorimore from Native Plant Trust. And I see all of our speakers have joined us, and I think, Uli, you are sharing your screen for slides, and go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yes. All right, here we go. It looks good. Andrea, Emily, Lindsay. Okay. Just give me the next when you'd like me to advance the slide, and I will mute myself.
Great. So Uli, if you want to go to the cover slide for us. So hi, I'm Andrea Berry. I'm the Executive Director of Wild Seed Project.
I'm Emily Baisden. I'm the Seed Center Director.
And we're going to be the first in this trio, and we will do our best to stick to the time because it will be pretty tight. But we're going to jump in talking about our new Native Seed Center in Cape Elizabeth, Maine.
So we are a nonprofit organization based in Maine, and our concept is really how to engage in conservation through community and giving individual people the tools needed to grow native plants from seed in all of the places that they visit or live in. You could go to the next slide. Before we get started, we just want to acknowledge that we are here on ancestral Wabanaki territory, now called Maine. And we at Wild Seed Project recognize the inherent sovereignty of the tribes of the Wabanaki, the people of the Dawn, the Abenaki, the Houlton Band of Maliseet Indians, the Mi'kmaq Nation, the Penobscot Nation, and the Passamaquoddy tribe. We support their continued work for justice, self-determination, and decolonization. As we engage in this work, we want to be clear this knowledge and information did not start, nor will it end with us. The resources we share are gathered from many teachers, both human and non-human, often in extractive ways. And we encourage folks to learn more about their historical and present-day relationships of the Indigenous people and communities to the places that they live, and to join us in supporting Indigenous-led efforts to protect the land, water, plants, and creatures among us. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. So our organization is mostly member and donor based, but we have a small seed sale also where we sell packets of seed that have about 50 to 100 seeds in a packet. So enough for an individual to grow an awful lot of plants if they want to. But to help grow that, we're building this small scale seed nursery. We are not a land holding or owning organization, but we have an agreement with the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust to be able to grow plants on their property. And the whole property is about 25 acres, and it's fully public land. It's part of both a conservation and an agricultural easement. So we're building these seed increase plots that we've been calling living seed banks. And then also on the property, we're helping with habitat plantings and helping to make management plans for the whole property to help support the wildlife in the area. And then there's also an old farmhouse on the property that we are building kind of ornamental gardens. It was traditionally non-native gardens that have kind of been overgrown after the person who was living there passed away and left the rest of the property to the Cape Elizabeth Land Trust. The gardens kind of became in disarray. So we are building kind of a ornamental shift while using native plants and showcasing how people can have attractive gardens while using also habitat building plants. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a picture of the property. We are on like half an acre, where we're actually growing plants and building these spaces. like I said, there's this agricultural easement that requires some sort of agriculture to be done on this property. And we kind of come in with a unique ability to being agriculture, but not in the historical sense that we think of as agriculture, where we're growing native plants and increasing seed plots. We also have a plant sale that these plants are used for, as well as various other projects happening throughout the state that we're going to talk about in a minute. You can get an idea of what the property looks like. It's got this kind of large wooded area, and then this area that has been historically farmed. It has not been farmed for years now, and we're helping with building kind of trails throughout a meadow and kind of restoring a meadow that's mostly agricultural weeds at this point, and a few really high quality native plants. So we're working on building that up. And you can see there's just like a little house there. You can go to the next slide. So this is kind of what we're building in that area, that yellow square. We've recently got our deer fencing up and our greenhouse in. And the greenhouse is funny because we're not actually growing plants within the greenhouse. We're mostly using it as a workspace where we're able to process seed and do our winter sowing. As many of you know, most of our plants have to be grown outside and get those winter conditions. So most of our greenhouse space is really a workspace. So we're not too frozen while we're doing all our seed sowing. And then we're growing lots of plants in frames and then also directly in the ground, and then also in pots. And it will be kind of a community open space where folks can come and learn and help work on things if they see fit, or just enjoy the space. So you can go to the next slide.
So our goal is really to take what is a very small scale amount of seed production, where we're essentially producing about 25,000 packets of individual home-focused seeds that's being distributed into communities. So it's about 2 million seeds a year from close to 100 different species total. The goal over the next 10 years with the Native Seed Center is to create enough living seed banks that we can grow 100 times that scale. We're still not talking anywhere near the scale that's happening in much of the rest of the country. You know, we will be sticking to the majority of that, just half acre by half acre fenced in area for that production. But for us, it's really giving us an opportunity to scale our seed production to supply the educational work that we're doing and the true conservation through community efforts that we're putting forward. Next slide.
Yeah, so these just kind of show a bit of the progression that we've gone through. It's been slow moving, which is sometimes good. We always try to remind ourselves that maybe we should move at plant space a little bit more, plant time. But we started with just some temporary fencing that we put in, and we're building up seed frames, and then we've got in some real fencing and some real high quality frames to grow in to protect from critters. And then we've been laying our landscape fabric and smothering all of the grass. There's an awful lot of grass there. And it's really starting to come together in a nice way. We planted our first beech plums last fall, and we'll be planting all throughout this coming spring. We've got a lot of plants ready to go in the ground. Things always take longer than you expect them to. So we've had plants ready and waiting, but the ground wasn't able to be prepped. So it's just always telling ourselves to work at the speed that we have available. Thanks. You could go to the next slide. But really what it takes is this huge community effort. We're a fairly small group. There's 8 of us. But it's very, very largely a team effort of the 8 employees and then our really large group of volunteers. And volunteers have been so necessary just to get us to the point of being able to have 8 employees. They're here for building. They help us with seed sowing. They help us with seed collection. They help us with every aspect of things, from filling mailers to actually getting their hands dirty. And you can see it everybody really loves what we do, but it really takes that community effort. And that's what we're trying to build upon, is making sure that everyone in our community is trained to be able to do these things in ethical ways, and to be able to continue the mission. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
And really for us, it's a three-part model. So the seed stewardship being conservation in action, which is what's happening at the Seed Center. And then we're committed to building and installing with community these community seed gardens. We really believe that people can be planting native plants in their hometowns, in the places where they work. This is actually right next to the LL Bean flagship store, that planting that you're seeing in the center on property that's owned by the town of Freeport, Maine. And small scale gardens being installed is step one, but then we are really using our tools around education to teach people how to identify when seeds are ready to be collected, when they're ripe, how to collect them, to clean them, to prep and store them, and then to sow them and to tend those plants going forward. We see that very much full cycle being the critical part to how we expand, because again, we're never going to have 100 acres as access to us. So we need to take advantage of what we do have, which is community. Next slide.
Yeah, so just a little further on the community seed gardens, these are a really cool idea that we kind of came up with, where we knew that half acre was going to be used for a lot of growing plants for our annual plant sale and growing plants for all these different projects. But what we really wanted was to have satellite gardens all over the state. So the picture here is at the Viles Arboretum in Augusta, Maine. And I just want to note that, like, our seed center is in the ecoregion 59, but our office is in really the tri-corner of eco 59, 82, and 58. So we overlap in so many of these areas. And in order to actually service the state of Maine and most of the Northeast really is our membership base, is to have these community seed gardens in multiple places and in satellite areas. And that's where things like Viles Arboretum comes in. Freeport Wolf's Neck Center will be building one there. Just on all sorts of different municipal, nonprofit, even corporate areas. And the concept is to have this kind of full circle educational opportunities where we teach people how to collect, how to sow, how to plant, and how to care for those plants and maintain the genetic diversity for the seeds and to be able to collect them. And that allows us to continue with our school and library programs where we do those educational outreach things. And then we're able to build the gardens at those sites. So they're able to learn how to read their site and understand what types of plants need to go in those areas. And then we do all these sorts of workshops, really full year round things to make it a really concise collective. Cool. You can go to the next slide.
And we'll just close out by really emphasizing that we believe in public seed access. We recognize that we are an organization that is striving for towards decolonization, which also includes kind of moving out of the capitalist model that we're using to sell seeds and plants and to get that into community. And so part of that strategy of making that transition away from that for sale model is creating these public seed access places and points throughout. So this is actually plantings that we've done at the Maine Beer Company in Freeport, Maine. And we're really working with anyone who will work with us all throughout the state. We know that restoration projects are critical to the conservation movement, but we also know that that's not enough. Maine has fully jumped into the 30 by 30 model, but we're asking the questions, what about the other 70%? And we're focusing our efforts. We know there are so many people and so many of our partner organizations across the state are focused on restoration projects. So we are trying to fill the other side of that gap, replacing lawns with natives, focusing on community gardens, and really looking at the smallest of places all the way down to planters outside of office buildings and outside of homes in some of our more urban parts. Little is it known that there are urban parts of Maine. So we're really trying to democratize seed access as much as we possibly can, and modeling that with our small scale growing and the satellite gardens. So just in conclusion, Uli, if you can go to the next slide, we know that there is so much lawn all across our state and all across this country, and those are prime spaces, we believe, for a changing of what's growing there and a shift to bring all of our green spaces into more balance. So if you can go to the next slide. This really incorporates our vision of where we want to go. We want to see native plants and seed being collected from native plants all throughout our community. So we'll go to the last slide, and Emily and I will just say thank you so much. We're really pleased to be part of the Northeast Seed Network, and are happy to answer any questions at the end after our partners present. So thanks so much, everyone.